Welcome to the 615 Locker Room Podcast. I'm your host, Wormy or Dylan, with Uncle Matt here. And today we're going to be going over a few things relating to Nashville SC, and then we have some talking points around other sports. Um, just the first couple housekeeping things I wanted to get into is we both wanted to say thank you for all the support that's been shown and all the people sharing and liking from our first episode. We really appreciate that. Um, we wouldn't be able to do any of this. We wouldn't be able to have our YouTube channels without the support of the Nashville SC community, and we appreciate that so much. A second thing is kind of a common question that I have received, and I'm sure Matt has kind of got a little bit of it too. Nothing is going to be changing with our individual channels. This will be its complete own entity. Um, the only thing changing is that I'm sure we'll both be shouting this out in ongoing videos. But besides that, everything that you've been seeing, you will continue to see, and nothing will change. Um, so yeah, let's go ahead and get into the last match against Charlotte. Um, it was another one that was a tough loss in my mind, just because we had another late penalty that kind of screwed us up. Um, a late score. Was it in the 90th minute that second goal to take them over happened? It was somewhere close to there, right, Matt?
Yeah, it was pretty much right at the end because the penalty was in the 80s. The second goal was shortly thereafter. So it was all, once again, right in like the death of the match where it's kind of like, what are you going to do at that point in time, to recover from it? It's kind of a tough spot to put yourself in, second match in a row.
I Yeah, and so anytime something like that happens, like you just like for me, it's like that's game then. But always something can happen, but still, so it's super tough to see that. And then there's some other things that happen in the game. The Walker injury that we're going to kind of go into a little bit more after we kind of give our overall thoughts. But um, I mean, I thought we looked good. Otherwise, that first half for sure, I thought we were electric. We have that one play up build within is somewhere between the 17th and 20th minute. I made a note of it that it's going around right now. People keep resharing it because it was just great soccer. A lot of the MLS commentators normally don't like to give us our flowers, but even they was like, "That's great soccer. We love to see that." It was amazing build up. Uh, Ahmed Kassam, once again, I thought that he really. Some said that he had a bad game last match before Charlotte. I thought he still did all right with the circumstances, and he really got that second opportunity to start this game and proved why he should be starting. I think he was playing phenomenally. Hani Mukhtar, we talked about the wash conversation last game. He got a goal. Um, and so I'm not saying that his form is 100% back to normal, but I never said it was 100% gone either. That's something that we should see. And I think that he played his role pretty good. He was defensively tough or defensively strong, in my opinion, which we haven't really seen a whole lot of. And that's something that excites me a lot. Um, but yeah, I thought our boys in gold played very, very good. We obviously lost, but I think it's every time I'm looking at these matches, it's hard not to be hold them in comparison to last year. Um, in which case, we are blowing last year's team out of the water in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's kind of my first general thoughts. Matt, what did you think of the match?
Yeah, I'd kind of echo your sentiments across the board for the most part. I mean, like, when you're kind of looking to last season, you don't want to lose a match. It's frustrating, having lost two in a row, obviously. But the difference in the way that we're feeling post match after these losses compared to last season, where it was just like dismal, just unbearable to watch soccer, just no hope. Just get the season over with type games. This season, we're creating chances. We're all over the pitch. At times we're dominating games, just maybe not finishing the chances as much as we need to really take that next step and kind of leaving ourselves open for chances. I thought this was kind of the tale of two halves. First half, we were just fully in control of the match. Like I was kind of, you know, when we previewed the match last week, I kind of was a little bit more thinking it was going to be a little bit more even, a little bit more,
Mm-hmm.
back and forth. We might have a tougher time than when I thought we would. But then I read some stuff about Charlotte, about how their offense hadn't clicked yet, about how they were still looking for their identity, and I was kind of like thinking it like, man, this could just be that game where like maybe our offense is better than I'm expecting it to be. Maybe we're like further ahead than I thought. Maybe we just sneak in there, we get like a 2-1 win and just kind of steal it. So if you watched, like I did like a live stream on my channel Saturday morning, and I had a slightly more positive tone, I think, in that one than like what I did with our preview last week, where I was kind of like, if we can get in there and get a 2-2 draw or something like that, that'll be good. I was actually kind of thinking we had a good chance to win. And I think it kind of played out that way, first half, especially. Like we were kind of in control of the match. It feels like if we had gotten, one more goal, two more goals in that first half and really kind of put the game away early, we wouldn't have been talking so much about it. But that's the story of sports. We're going to talk a little bit about a certain team that managed to find a way to lose a game in 30 seconds, I think a little bit later on. But, you got to finish games. You got to take advantage of things when you're on top, when you have the momentum, when you have the energy, when you have the chances, you got to finish. And, there wasn't like, so many clear cut misses this game as we had against Cincinnati. We're obviously like the penalty miss against Cincinnati, the kind of back post, borderline tap in, Hani miss. Those are going to be ones that stick out like a sore thumb where you're like, yeah, you got to finish those. There wasn't as many just outright bad misses, but we definitely had control in the first half and didn't do enough with it. And I kind of look at the second half, and there's a part of me that like could do a storyline where it's like, this is who cost us the game, and it's all these outside forces and these other things. And I could do a whole narrative that direction. But I think the more real narrative is ultimately we got to look our own self in the mirror and kind of say, we didn't, put our foot on the gas. We didn't put our foot on their throats. We didn't, take advantage of the situation when we had control. In the second half, when we started to lose control, we didn't handle that very well going forward. So, to me, I kind of look in the mirror more than anything. But at the same time, I'm trying to look on the positive side of things and say, hey, that first half was pretty great. We didn't see a whole lot of soccer like that basically in the history of National SC. So it's going to come with time. We're going to get more used to playing this way. We're going to start finishing those chances. Things are going to start coming, where it's like instead of being like a 1-0 half, we're going to go into halftime up 2-0, and things are going to look better. On the road, a tough team like Charlotte hasn't lost a match at home. I think you can kind of chalk some of that up to just being like a tough matchup.
Yeah. And another few things about the match that I had wrote down is that we saw Eddie, some more of the Eddie instigating. I know there was one instance where another player was talking to the ref and just like complaining about something, and Eddie just walked up and was like, "No, dude, it's okay, it's okay," and he was just it's super funny because he's a guy that you know he has to use what he can. He's not really he's I wouldn't say he's physically dominant on any sports field, um, besides speed. But I think he uses a little bit of his smart alecky to get in the heads of some of the opposing team. And like we have that one iconic picture from the preseason where he's walking away and kind of looking back and laughing
Mm-hmm.
while the other team is like arguing.
Mm-hmm.
So that was something that made me crack up watching him like the whole match, just kind of talk crap to people. But he also consulted the player after the Walker injury, so it goes both ways. But he's been a funny guy to kind of keep watching and how he behaves in a match. And another thing is we saw Palacios. I think that's how you say it. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
he subbed on for his first MLS match, I believe.
For us, for sure, I think he may have had like a cup of coffee with another team in the past, but it was his first minutes of the season for us, and
Mm-hmm.
I kind of thought that was, we needed to see him. We're going to need the full,
Mm-hmm.
depth of the squad over the course of the season, but in that moment, that was one where like, when I'm talking about like that, I think we kind of look in the mirror that we may have cost ourselves as much as anything else. I'm kind of looking at that. We've got Josh Bauer, who was on the bench. He's played right back so far this season, but he's, naturally his natural position is a center back. He's
Yeah.
started the last two matches, 2 goals in the last two matches, and maybe BJ's thinking, well, he's played those matches at right back, not center back. Maybe he's been working a little bit more at that position in practices and trainings and stuff like that. So, but to me, I was like, you're putting a guy in ice cold who hasn't played a single minute this season in a particular moment where, with the emotion, with the, intensity coming off the Walker injury, with, the fact that we were kind of slipping, kind of starting to lose control of the match, I kind of would have preferred, Josh Bauer, who's been a little bit more in rhythm, a little bit more, in the mix coming on, as opposed to, a guy who has played 0 minutes. Like, I understand,
Yeah.
he's got to get in at some point in time because we're going to need him throughout the season, but that felt like a weird spot to like throw a guy into the fire for his, and he's a veteran guy, he's, I think, 31, 32. He's played,
Yeah.
if not in MLS, he's been playing in high level leagues in Colombia and around, South and North America. But that one to me, like, when as soon as he came on, I was kind of like, like it wasn't like I was like, oh, we're about to give up a goal because this guy's going to do something stupid. But I was kind of like, I kind of would prefer if Josh was the one coming on at center back here, just, go with the man in form, go with the guy in rhythm there. And, the second goal was definitely a little bit, it's not all on him, but, our defense, our goalkeeper, Joe, Jack, him, were just all over the place on that second goal, where it's just like a pretty simple ball over the top that you should be able to deal with pretty easily, just
Hmm.
completely caused us to be like chickens with our heads cut off. And we'll never know, would Josh have done better in that situation, but I would have felt better with a guy who was a little bit more in sync, a little bit more in rhythm, having played some minutes already coming into that situation than, you know, Palacios, who has played 0 minutes up to this point in the season. So that was one of those ones where I'm kind of like, did we maybe like overthink it there? Did we maybe like, and it's hard to say because, I'm sure BJ Callahan is, there's a reason he's the head coach of the team, and we're just guys sitting here talking on a video stream. He sees those guys every day in training. He's got a better feel for who can do what there. But that was one just, Monday morning cornerback, kind of coaching from the sidelines, where I'm kind of like, that seems a bit of a weird move there to me. It could have, you know, had no change at all if it was Bauer or him. But to me, that was one where I was kind of like, I kind of wish maybe it had been Josh Bauer instead of him in that moment.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense. And uh, if we had to sub out Andy Nahar, maybe put like Taylor Washington there. I
Mm-hmm.
don't. I'm not sure who our depth would be in that position because right now it's Josh Bauer who is a center back. Um, so yeah, that's one of those things that like I don't know the answer, and BJ is paid to do it, so I'm sure he does. But obviously it didn't work out. But Palacios will probably get some minutes in the next week or
Mm-hmm.
two. So hopefully we'll see him, a little bit more prepared because he probably thought he wasn't going in at all that game, to be
Yeah.
honest. Um,
And that may have been some of BJ's thinking there is like, you can, I think anybody with, eyes could see it was a pretty serious injury to Walker. And maybe that's part of the thought process is, I don't know when Walker's coming back in. Palacios is probably the guy who might be in there for the next couple of weeks. Let's go ahead and get him in there, get him going as soon as possible, as opposed to, trying to like bring him in slowly. So those are all things that could have been a factor in the decision making there.
yeah, I agree. Um, So, gonna kind of talk a little bit about the Walker Zimmerman injury because that's a huge part that came out of this. This is the first time that I got an ESPN notification about Nashville SC this year,
Hmm.
which it's unfortunate. But firstly,
Yeah.
our thoughts goes out to his family. I'm sure that was super scary for them, and still there may be unanswered questions. But he is cleared from the hospital and he's out. Um, but yeah, so he took a bicycle attempt, kick to the face, and it kind of just knocked him out cold. It appeared, uh, and that's kind of what I figured when I missed the first. I know they like replayed it once on the Apple TV stream and then didn't again. But I caught a video of it later from the Facebook group. But once you see all those players from the Nashville SC side waving over the medical staff as quickly as they did, I kind of assumed he went out cold just because they're not really trained medical staff, and if they could recognize a problem that quick, I would assume it's probably something super easy to tell. Uh, but I'm sure he got a concussion. Uh, had to have got a concussion, taking a kick straight to the head. But yeah, he got knocked out, and I think what scared a lot of people is kind of just the. Don't get me wrong. It's a terrible thing to go through, and I'm sure that sucked. But I think some of those like MLS precautionary like guidelines, whatever, Uh, I think those made it look a bit worse than it probably was in terms of like wheeling him off in a full neck brace. Um, I think that kind of made it look a bit scarier. But what was kind of your thoughts whenever you watched it happen?
Yeah, it was one of those where, like, saw it live in the moment. It was kind of like, to your point, you could kind of tell pretty quickly from the players' reactions that it was, pretty bad. Because I was watching it at a Fog Street local bar here in Nashville. So, like, I wasn't like sitting right, eyeballs on the TV. Didn't have like, the best full view. And so, like, I never really saw a full clean one because even the replay they showed, they were both kind of like, the full, wide angle where you don't really see fully how bad the contact was, but you could just tell, especially like from Vargas, the player from Charlotte, like how like distraught he was over it. That
Yeah.
was what really scared me more than anything was like, because I've seen moments like that in like, professional wrestling and MMA and, other sports, NFL, where like you do a completely normal in your perception, action in the game and a guy gets hurt so bad and then you're just like distraught, like, can't continue. Like his face where he was like, and you mentioned Taxeth going over and consoling him because he was so upset, like that made it seem like so much worse to me than it even looked from all the initial contact, was just his reaction as much as anything. And I saw some reports like online, like there were some people who were at the game live that said he was bleeding really badly, which may have, been another reason that the, medical staff took extra precaution, just not fully wanting to take any chances in a situation like that. But yeah, it was really scary. It's one of those like, terrible moments. Like, what is either guy supposed to do in that spot? Because it's, of course, Vargas is going to attempt that type of kick in that moment. Of course, Walker being the type of, balls to the wall center back he is, he's going to put his head down and try to go and get that ball off the line and get it out of the danger zone for his team. So sucks. Those things happen in sports across the board. It's horrible for him. Like you mentioned, it's great news that he was, pretty quickly discharged from the hospital. So it sounds like there was no, you know, other issues. You see him going out in a neck brace and, thinking the worst, what could possibly be happening there. But it sounds like, like you mentioned, hopefully concussion, maybe some stitches. I would expect he's out at least a week or two at the least. So, but that's, best case scenario, where you see a guy getting wheeled off in a stretcher in a neck brace, you're thinking, when are we ever, or is he ever going to play again? So to hear that he got out of the hospital pretty much that night, I think that's a positive sign. I think that's an encouraging thing. I had a lot of thoughts about like that moment from a referee perspective and just like some other stuff in the match from a referee perspective, because that just always goes through my mind being a referee myself. And I was like, you're never going to see that given as a red card in soccer. I mean, because how many times do we see, we rarely see one as severe as that, where a guy goes from an overhead kick or a bicycle kick and catches a defender. But I was like, if that happened, take it out of the box, take it not being a shot on goal, make it not an overhead kick. If like the Charlotte player has his plant foot on the ground and just wheels around, high boot, kicks a defender in the face, they're probably going to give that a red card.
Mm-hmm.
But it's never been done that way on those type of kicks in terms of like bicycle kicks and stuff like that. And I was almost kind of like, maybe that's something they need to start like talking about. Maybe we need to start looking at that should probably be a red card, because I can't imagine a more dangerous play than one that results in a guy getting carted off the field in a neck brace. I mean, that's the whole point of, why we give red cards, why we give in certain situations is for, reckless or dangerous or violent play. And, there's no intent there, but there's nothing in the laws of the game that ever says intent. If you intentionally kick somebody in the face, we're definitely going red card in that situation. So I don't know. It's never been given, so I'm not going to blame the ref for not giving anything more than a foul there. But I think that could be something, and I don't know if one moment in a random MLS match is going to change the way FIFA and the world soccer looks at moments like that. But I was kind of like, that was kind of one of my big takeaways from that was like, that just felt like, if a guy's going off in a freaking stretcher, it seems like that's a pretty bad situation where, something a little bit more severe on the punishment side should be going the other way there. But, I don't think it'll ever go that way. And like, I don't blame the referee for not doing anything there. Cause like I said, it's never been enforced that way. It's never been approached that way. And I don't expect it would be, but that was one where I was kind of like, God, this just feels bad. Like I was putting myself in like the shoes and it's, very different. Like, the level I referee, like mostly like, semi-pro and youth stuff. But like, if I was refereeing like some like U14s and a kid gets wheeled off on a stretcher, I'm going to be like, I should have called something here. There had to have been something I should have done there that could have done something different there. But, once again, different levels, but that set with me a lot. Like what what could have or should have been done by the referee. And I thought, I was a little off on this referee. I don't think he was bad, but I
Mm-hmm.
thought he was like kind of inconsistent throughout the match. Like the penalty, was it a foul? Probably. Were there 100 things that were very similar all over the pitch that he did not call? Absolutely. There was a moment, like it had to have been only like 5 minutes or so before the penalty, where I think it was Kassam is on the ball and he's just kind of holding it up. He's kind of waiting for some of our guys to run into play. And a Charlotte player just kind of comes up behind him, very similar to what Andy Nahar did to Zaha, and just kind of gives him a little hip check in the back, knocks Kassam over. No call. Hani kind of runs over and he's trying to pull the ball out of the situation because the ref's not calling anything. And another Charlotte player kind of comes over and like knocks Hani over. It's like two like bowling pins get knocked over on our side. And then we get called for, it was either had to have been a handball while our two players were on the ground, which why were the two players on the ground, or it had to have been called dangerous play for them being on the ground, which once again, why were they on the ground? And those two fouls to me, I'm like, that wasn't that dissimilar. And like I understand letting things go, especially at that level. Like those dudes, professional soccer players, like even like high school like boys that I'm reffing right now. We're in season for high school boys season right now in Tennessee. They want to play for the most part. They'll come and bitch about little things here and there, but like they kind of want to play and be physical. And I know at the higher level that's even more so, but can't like kind of let that go and then give like a penalty like that 2 minutes later or whatever it was. I was like, I was just felt like soft for what he was calling up to that point in the game was a little bit. That was my only complaint about the penalty. Like once again, it was a foul. It was very once again, if I'm looking in the mirror and saying, hey, we were kind of our own enemy in this, very stupid of Andy Nahar. Wilfred Zaha, has a pretty big reputation if you follow English soccer for being a dude who goes over pretty easily. So
Mm-hmm.
you got to be smarter than that. When if he beats you, just let him go. Don't even come close to him and like give him that little nibble on the back of his heel and give him the chance to go down right there. But was what it was, and like I said, it wasn't that it was like I didn't think it was not a foul. I was just like there's some inconsistency with the stuff he was calling in the match that was a little frustrating from that standpoint. But end of the day, like I said, I can look in the mirror as much as anything and say, hey, Andy Nahar, don't be an idiot and give him the chance to take that foul in that situation.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the like frustrating things that I also noticed is like I feel like we're making mistakes like in the penalty box, which is that's just we've given up probably a handful ish, less than a handful now, which that continues to trend. I mean, we're just giving away goals at that point, which is frustrating. But I did notice something with Zaha, and the Apple TV stream caught it too. I don't know if you were able to at the place you were at, but he was like pre-game. He went up and he was talking to the referee like this, and the commentator was like, he's probably telling him to make sure to watch for him because he's been getting fouled. I was like, what? It's like, why would the commentator say that? Which I don't watch Charlotte. That could be the case that he's not getting his calls. And as a fan of the game, I want calls to go both ways. And like you said, it was a bit inconsistent. But yeah, I think that just we got to stop making those mistakes in those dangerous territories, especially late in games. I don't know if it's because
Hmm.
we're tired and we're tired. We're not really moving as smoothly as whenever we first started the game. I don't know what it is, but we definitely got to work on that.
I think if there is anything, and this is just me talking off the top of my head, I don't have any like deep film study type of insight into this, but I mean we're definitely playing, obviously playing more players up the pitch. We're pushing more players forward, being in a more attack mode. So I kind of wonder if we're kind of isolating our defenders a little bit more than maybe we did in the Gary Smith era, where it was a lot more get 10 people behind the ball and everybody's kind of sitting back. So in that situation, we're having more 1v1s, and it's if you're a defender, you get beat. You don't have the help that we had in the past when we were sitting with back with extra players, and kind of you're either thinking you have to do something to break up a play, or you're just getting caught in a bad spot because you're on a 1v1 or something like that. But I do kind of wonder because it is kind of a weird pattern. I think we've had, what has it been, two in the last two matches, but I think we've had at least because Philadelphia had a penalty too. I mean, we've played 7 matches and had at least 3 penalties. That's kind of not like a good trend. That is
Yeah,
definitely not a good trend.
yeah. That and maybe I know in basketball, for example, I don't know if it's the same way in soccer, but really like we as a team are playing more offense heavy, more possession based. And I think maybe that is tiring out our defense our defense guys and making them be a little bit more sloppy. Because I know in basketball you normally get a guy who's like super into scoring, or you get a guy who is super like hard on defense, and don't really get both because you don't get the same level of you can either get one or you can get the other, and there's not really a good mix because you'd be dead within like half of the game. So I don't know if
Yeah,
that's the
yeah.
same thing for soccer or not, but
It definitely is. I think if you ask like coaches what type of player would they want like a Cristiano Ronaldo or they want an Eddie Tagseth? I think most coaches would say, I'd like 11 Eddie Tagseths because they'll just run to death. They might not have like the high level of athleticism and the skill level, but like, you know, one of the issues that kind of brought to the end of Ronaldo's career in Europe was that he just the press, counter pressing, gegenpressing, pressing became such a big thing in European soccer. And Ronaldo was like, I'm just going to stand in the box and wait till crosses come in and just I'll score goals. That's all I'm going to do is try to score goals. And that just didn't work in like a team based, pressing system. And like I was actually like thinking about that. It's a good transition. I know you want to talk about some about the NCAA basketball tournament. Like I was watching, the Houston Duke game, and this is me, stupid soccer brain. I know the answer, but at the same time, I'm like, it just blows my mind. I was like, why don't basketball teams just full court press the whole game? Because it was like as soon as Houston put on the press, Duke could not do anything. They completely fell apart. They unraveled. Like it was like the game flipped. And I'm like, I know the thing is like, well, it's energy. You don't want to waste all your energy pressing the whole game. And I'm like, man, I've watched the Red Bull teams. I've watched, Jurgen Klopp's, teams in Germany and England do full on pressing for 90 minutes. And I'm like, I just feel like maybe basketball players are a little bit more prima donnas. We're like, yeah, I'm not going to run around and do that much work. And even though it's only for like 6 minutes at a time, and then we get a break, and then we go to a quarter and everything like that. That's me being a stupid, like casual basketball fan, being just like, those guys could do a lot more than they do. And I'm like, why don't they just press the whole game and stuff like that? But I actually texted a buddy of mine who I know is kind of like similar to you, who's into soccer and into basketball. I was like, why weren't they pressing the whole game? They would have won that game by like 50 points. I was like, it makes no sense to me.
yeah, it's definitely that. I mean, that's an energy thing. And then also like full court presses are like if you're not on top of it, you can just blow past it, and then there's probably going to be space to the basket there. Um, but speaking of the Houston versus Duke game, Duke is officially out of March Madness. My bracket is officially busted. Um, I had Cooper Flag. He's I was wanting to see him win. But tomorrow is Houston versus Florida for the men's March Madness winner. Do you have a prediction for who's going to win that?
Oh man, we talked a little bit about gambling stuff on the last one, and I actually had two future bets that I placed before the start of the tournament on teams to win it all to win the championship. I had Florida and Duke on advanced bets. So I was like rooting for Duke last night. Like if they win this game, I got guaranteed money coming one way or the other. And then they somehow blew it and lost. And I'm like, oh my god, you kidding me? So for my guest, trying to win some money, I'm definitely rooting for Florida. I've got like some family, my in-laws are Florida fans, so I'll throw my sport behind them anyway. But I don't know, man. Houston just looked like the way they just when they turned it on, like I said, and this is just my stupid brain of being like,
Mm-hmm.
you just start playing defense and the other team can't do anything as soon as you do that. Like I'm like that. Florida had that one dude who just scored 30 points, was unstoppable. So it's going to be kind of like an interesting matchup, I guess, from that perspective, where you got Florida who had the unstoppable dude who just scored all the points versus Houston who turned on some like lockdown defense in the second half and just smothered Duke out. So what's gonna, something's got to give there. It's either is the guy for Florida, is he going to still get buckets, or is it going to be Houston's defense kind of closing it down? So it's going to be a fun game, I'm sure, one way or the other. I know like there was a lot of people talking about that this tournament hadn't been the best up to this point, just because no real upsets, kind of a lot of blowouts. Pretty much all the top seeds kind of winning comfortably. But those two games yesterday were both, even though Florida kind of was in control, like it was just enough where Auburn was still like sniffing around, still like making it interesting. And then like I was literally lying in bed watching the Duke Houston game, and they were up like Duke was up like 9 or 10 points with like five or
Yeah.
6 minutes left. It was here it was like 11 o'clock at night. My wife was like, "Turn the TV off. This game's over." And I was like, I'm just gonna watch it a little bit longer. And luckily, luckily I was for Duke, but I mean, luckily I kept watching. It was like slowly chipped away, and I was like, "Oh, this is going a different way." And it was finally like, well, at least we got a good game. So I think the championship game, based on the performances of the teams in the two games, we should have a pretty good matchup there. I'm always a defensive first guy, so I mean, Houston seems to be the defensive team, so I guess I'll go Houston. But I need Florida to win to give me some money.
Yeah, this March Madness has definitely been probably the least that I've been tuned in the past few years, just because, like you said, I mean, nothing like everything that I thought was going to happen has pretty much happened. There's been like two or three like upsets, but like it hasn't been that eventful in my eyes. We had the one Arkansas game, I think, where they came back from the biggest deficit in March Madness history to win the game.
Mm-hmm.
That was exciting to watch. And then last night, looking at it without having any stake in Duke, I thought it was, that watching that come back would have been exciting, and that was a good game. It was a good basketball game. But yeah, so for tomorrow, Tennessee Vols guy, Knoxville, Tennessee. I can't go Florida, unfortunately. I'm gonna have to root against your bet, root against your family. I have to go Houston, whether or not I think that they will win. I think they will, uh, but even if they weren't, my support would be Houston. Um, and then congratulations to the UConn women's team. They won the tournament today, this morning, I
Mm-hmm.
think. Um,
Yep.
so it will be exciting. We'll probably touch on that and who won last next week. Um, Nashville Predators just lost their game 2-1. So that's
No, no way. Predators lost. That's crazy. That never happens.
they're so bad that I stopped watching. I'm more interested in the Southern Premier Hockey League, I think is what it's called, the Knoxville Ice Bears. But that kind
Okay.
of segues us into the next little topic. I don't really have much on this besides it happened and it's cool because like I'm not super into NHL. I don't think Matt, you're not super into hockey that much really.
I mean, my kind of support kind of ebbs and flows with how the Predators are. Like if the Predators are doing really good, I'll be following pretty closely. But when they are like they are this season, I'm pretty checked out. My mom watches every single game, so she'll text me one way or the other what's going on, and she'll keep me updated. Like my mom is my hockey source for whatever reason. I don't know how she got to be. She's just the ultimate Nashville sports fan. She watches every
Yeah.
Predators game, every Titans game, every Nashville SC game. Will text me about everything. She should probably do this podcast. My mom's a bigger sports fan than I am, to be honest, at this point. But she's retired. She's got plenty of time to get into that stuff. I still have to work and make a living. So, but she's my Predator source of information. So she's been telling me for like 2 years that like Saros, the goalkeeper, was crap when everybody else was saying he was good. So she's now doing a victory lap this season, being like, I knew he was bad all along. It's all his fault. And I'm like, that's true or not, but you say so.
Hey, their moms are always right.
I guess so. Yeah, yeah.
Maybe we'll get her on an episode.
Mm, yeah.
uh,
I don't know that she could understand the technology, be able to get onto this. Like I have to I have to download apps for her on her phone and stuff like that if she ever needs anything. So getting her
we
onto a podcast would be a huge challenge.
we're basically doing what was out of this world in Back to the Future Part Two.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's what we were doing right now. I think that's how some parents still look at it. Like, no, that can't work. No way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but anyways, the NHL, Alex Ovechkin, um,
Mm-hmm.
he scored his 895th goal today to pass the Wayne Gretzky all-time NHL scoring record. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I honestly had no clue this was even happening. I had a hockey friend that I work with text me today. I was like, "Hey, do you want to come over and watch this guy pass this goal record?" I was like, "Not really," uh, but I'll watch a replay of it. But um, I think they still lost their game like 4-1. So it, but not to discount what he did. But that happened. I guess Wayne
Mm-hmm.
Gretzky is kind of the goat of hockey. and I think he still will be referred to as the goat of hockey.
Yeah, I think to kind of your point, like almost the story of the deal is more just how kind of under the radar it was. Like, I like there hasn't been I don't know the last time in sports there was like kind of a big record like this that somebody was breaking. I mean, like maybe going back to like Barry Bonds breaking the home run record or something like that. And even that, they were like, ESPN was cutting in every game, being like, oh, we got to see if is this the one? Is this the one? Is this the one? And I don't know if it's because like hockey is just like in general popularity is down, or if it's because like the Washington team's just not like that interesting of a team this season, or if just because Ovechkin's, he's Russian, so he's not like, the household, like, all American. I mean, Gretzky's Canadian, so it's not like he's an all American, but like, he's maybe not as like the pop culture presentable guy that
Yeah.
Gretzky was back in the day. But I mean, one of the things that's kind of crazy about it is like I can't remember the exact number, but like so he's breaking Gretzky's goal record, but
Mhm.
Gretzky still has like the NHL total points record, which is like goals and assists
Yeah.
combined, and he's got it by like 1,000 points by anybody else. Like it's even with Ovechkin breaking the goals record, he'd have to have like 1,000 assists or something crazy like that to even like come close to that other record. So like that's how like far ahead everybody Gretzky was just overall as a player was that combined goals assist he just was doing it all back then when he was playing. But yeah, it was cool thing. I saw like the videos and stuff going around. I thought it was pretty cool. Like it was at I think it was at the New York Islanders arena. It wasn't even in the
Yeah.
home arena, and it was pretty cool how like the whole arena went nuts for the moment. Just got excited for it. They had a cool presentation like that, so it was cool. It's awesome to see stuff like that happen. Some of those records. We watch sports all these years and just want something cool to happen. So, but it was kind of weird just how like kind of off the radar it was. Like it was like this should be like a much bigger deal than it was, and just kind of came and went. But we'll see.
And I
I think
think
it
it.
was also kind of like he was never supposed to be like he was never supposed to be like he was never the heralded like the LeBron or like the because he came in around the same time as like I don't know if how familiar with this guy you are, but like Sidney Crosby was supposed to be the next Wayne Gretzky. He plays for the Pittsburgh Penguins. I think they came in either the exact same season or within 2 seasons of each other. And Ovechkin was just a guy that just came in the league, and Crosby was the guy who was like on all the commercials was like this is the next big deal. He's he was like promoted the way NBA promotes LeBron or the way that they're young players that are supposed to be the next great things. And like Ovechkin was just a dude who just showed up, and it was almost like his first 5 years he was really good, but I guess it was like almost like he wasn't getting the pomp and circumstance and like the media hype behind him that he was doing really good. And all of a sudden it was like kind of snuck up on everybody. Like in the last like 3 or 4 years, where it's like, oh shit, this guy scored a lot of goals. He's actually getting close to this record somehow. So it's a weird deal. It was definitely a weird deal. Like it was a really cool moment, but it was kind of weird how like it's should be one of those big records that like everybody's freaking out about, and just kind of was like, yeah, good for him. He did it.
Yeah. I'm sure it'd be awesome for people who are diehard hockey fans.
Mm-hmm.
I personally like. I was like, that's cool. Whatever. But yeah, so congrats to him. Congrats to the team. Um, Another thing that kind of takes us back into Tennessee a little bit before we talk about next week's game is John Morant is fined $75,000 again for doing the gun gestures at the opposing team. I think this is like the third time he's done it in the past week or two, and Adam Silver was like, "Hey, you can't keep doing that. You gotta stop." And for some reason, this guy just loves his firearms, and he he can't help it, and that's like, John Morant has the potential to be like I think he is a superstar, and I think that he has the potential to go on and do a great career, but he is making these dumb choices that kind of takes me out of the fandom around him and kind of makes me gravitate towards another Grizzly player, just because like there's you make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes, and I can look past that. But this is a repetitive thing with him, and it's so frustrating to watch as a fan. Which he didn't get suspended, I don't believe, from any game, so it doesn't really affect me. Besides, like, because he it just cost him 75K, but like, it's one of those things. It's like it's kind of just kind of I don't even know the word for it, but it's annoying to watch.
Yeah, like I kind of like because obviously he's got the history where he's gotten in trouble for like real gun stuff, like
Mm-hmm.
obviously off the court and stuff like that. So it's kind of like, from that perspective, I wish he would be, like you said, be a little smarter. But I mean, like, if he's kind of like cleaned like his off the court stuff up, and this is just him kind of almost being like trying to have fun with it and being like, look, I screwed this up, like I don't know what his mindset is really, but
Yeah.
like the fact that he did it like 2 games in a row, he got warned and came back and did it again, almost makes me feel like he's almost kind of like, hey, I'm just having fun with this stuff. Like, I don't, punish me if you want, but I'm like, he's like, I hope, obviously, hope he doesn't come out and like post another Instagram video where he's got a real gun or something this weekend after I say this. But like, I don't know. I like him kind of having fun, trying to like, push back against the league, being like cracking down on him. I don't hate that. Like,
Hmm.
I like him having a little bit of spirit, a little bit of fire in that regard, as opposed to like, I don't know, just been like, there's so much stuff in like the NBA that's just like, I'm just put off by like LeBron like complaining about Stephen A. Smith criticizing his son. It's like, your son's a player. Like, that's part of the game. Like, that's the nature of it. Like, you can't come in dad mode and be like, don't talk about my son. It's like, your son is trying to be an NBA player just like you. That's part of the game, is being criticized. So like, but like if LeBron, like, granted, like I said, I don't want to see or Ja Morant coming out and like doing like real gun stuff anymore. I hope he's put that behind him. But like, if he's just like trying to like kind of give an FU to the league, being like, I'm going to do the stupid little finger guns, just even if you don't like it or not. That's, to me, that's a little bit of fun. But with his background, with his history, it's kind of a touchy subject, I'm sure. So it's kind of like, yeah, what do you, damned if you do, damned if you don't, kind of thing.
I think you changed my mind a little bit. If he's just doing it to kind of troll the league, take the background out of it, I would think it was funny if it was any other player. So maybe I need to revisit my opinion on that. And then kind of going back to what you said about the LeBron Stephen A. Did you see Stephen A. like after LeBron confronted him, and then Stephen A. like went on his show and apologized? Like the day after, he's like, "If LeBron would have touched me, I would have beat his ass." And I was like, "Dude, that's ridiculous, bro."
Yeah, it's also dumb, and I think that's why, like, the whole podcast medium has grown in sports, because like that's what ESPN and like the main like networks have become, is just like yelling guys, just yelling about like, I was gonna fight this guy, or oh, he's the worst player ever. Like, they're just yelling their opinions and hot takes, and everybody's like, oh, I'd rather watch like a podcast where like guys are just kind of reasonably, sensibly talking about things, as opposed to these two idiots just like screaming at each other about like the stupidest crap in the world. Where it's like, you're you're 5'9". You're not going to fight LeBron James, who's like one of the largest, like most athletic people on the planet Earth. He would have ended you if you threw a punch. Your life would be over. Like LeBron James. I don't think he's like a tough guy like John Jones or anything like that, but just his pure
Yeah.
athleticism and size, he would wreck Stephen A. Smith. So it's such a stupid situation on both sides. It's like, this is it's one of the things where it's like every time I kind of like lean back into the NBA, something dumb like that happens where I'm like, is this really what we're doing? Like, these guys just like, don't talk about my son. I'd hit him on sight, or like, what are we doing here? Like, what are we even doing here?
Yeah, I find that this stuff like that so funny because it is so ridiculous. Um, but to reel us back into kind of being on topic of the 615 area, Real Salt Lake next week. Matt, before we kind of go into analysis on this, would you like to give your opinion on the club's name?
I have hated this since before Nashville SC was even a dream of an existence. Like, I can remember when like, I'm old enough to remember when Real Salt Lake was first announced, and I was like, are we? Because this was like at the epicenter of like, because if you go back into the early days of MLS, we had all these horrible, stupid names like Miami Fusion, Chicago Fire, which is fine, whatever, like Dallas Burn. There were all these just ridiculous names, and then the league like over pivoted, overcorrected the other way, where we were like, okay, we have to have Real Salt Lake, we have to have city using inner. It's like, inner what that's not a term. We don't do that here. Like, this, just name the teams like normal names. Like, I'm almost like, I'm okay with Nashville Soccer Club, because I'm like, that's what it is. It's Nashville Soccer Club. We're not stealing like a foreign language word that makes no sense. Like, I was like, I remember when it happened, I was like, is there like a Spanish community in like Utah I don't know about, where they're like, because like that's what Real Madrid is, literally stands for Royal Madrid. It's not like that's what Real means in Spanish. That's why they call themselves Real Madrid. It's Royal Madrid. I'm like, is there like a heavy contingent of like Spanish Mormons out in Utah that were like, yes, we should name the team Real Salt Lake or something like that? I've always hated it. I've always thought it was the stupidest thing in the world. Like, I kind of can't believe it's never been changed. They've just like, is where all these other clubs have rebranded over the years. Montreal's changed their name like 15 times. New York Metro Stars is now Red Bull New York. Like, it's so easy just to go, hey, we made a mistake. Kansas City Wizards, they're SCKC or whatever they are now. It's like, just, wipe this away. We'll be Salt Lake Football Club, or they could match the hockey team. I think the hockey team is now called Salt Lake Hockey Club or Utah Hockey Club or something like that. Just, we made a mistake. It was stupid. We wrote it out for way too many years. Let's get rid of it and just kind of like come up with like a more normal, not weird. Why are we Real? Like, you're not Real. Like, especially because like it's one thing just like to steal a Spanish word, but like to steal like from like the like most successful, most famous, like most prominent club in the history of soccer when you're like a random club in Utah, like like LA, New York, maybe one of those teams could have pulled off being Real, but like Real Salt Lake of all places, it's always been ridiculous to me. It's always been stupid to me. But it's almost just at this point in time, it almost like doesn't phase me anymore. But I remember like as soon as it was announced, I was like, "Is this real? Is this a parody? Is this a joke?" So yeah, right out of the gates, that's always a pet peeve of mine. Has been them being Real Salt Lake. Ugh.
um, I every match day vlog where where Blaney gets them, you have to say your little tidbit of like this is a stupid name, and it always cracks me
I can't help
up.
it. I can't help it. It just drives me crazy when I hear it. I'm like, this is so stupid. Like, it's already like it's a little wonky where we have like Inter Miami and we have like New York City or FC City and whatever other random teams we have. But that's just the worst of like we're gonna like try to mimic what they do in Europe, but we get it so wrong. Like at least like where it's like okay, football club, soccer club, city. We're actually in a city, so we can call ourselves city, but like Real. It's like the dumbest one to me. It drives me crazy.
But yeah, I think it's also silly. They are standing right now in the 10th place of the Western Conference with 3 wins and 4 losses, 0 draws. They've their last few matches, they've I feel like it's been fairly even, and since like they have beat some good teams, and then they've also been beat by some of the newer, weaker teams. I'm not really entirely too sure. I haven't watched any of their games this season. I know they have Diego Luna, who's a U.S. national player, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm excited to watch him. They have one of our guys now, Forster Jago,
Yeah.
which he's scored a few times this season, I believe. Um, so it's always going to be exciting to see. Yeah, he scored 1 goal. Um, he scored 1 goal at some point. So it's always exciting to see our guys come back. Even though he was like not really like, I feel like he was kind of a failed investment that we made, in a way, or a failed project, more to say. Uh, but what are your thoughts coming up on this match?
Yeah, kind of in the same boat as you. I kind of looked at their record, looked at a little bit of stuff, and I haven't done like a full on deep dive into them to really have like a full breakdown, full analysis. But I know they lost Chico Arango, who was like their superstar player. They sold him to San Jose in the offseason. That was a huge loss for them, like you mentioned. They do still have Diego Luna, who's been a kind of up and coming player, slowly working his way more and more into the U.S. national team. Um, Big thing that kind of gave me like a little bit of positive encouragement, kind of looking at their stats, what they've done so far is they just haven't scored a lot of goals, but they've given up a lot of goals. So it kind of feels like this could be a good matchup for us. The new style of play we're doing, where we're pushing more, creating more chances. Coming up against a team that doesn't score that well, we're going to get chances. We're going to score goals. Home game at Geodis Park. initial gut reaction is making me feel pretty good about it. It's kind of weird because like this is kind of our first matchup against a Western Conference opponent, unless I'm missing something. But so I was looking through. It's like there's no common opponents yet. There's no real way to kind of fully gauge, where we're at versus where they're at because they're 3-4, we're 3-1-3, I think, but haven't played anybody the same. So like, there's no like real like, oh, well, we did this well against this team. They did this against that team. But I just initially kind of looking at stuff. I feel pretty good about it. I'll probably have a better feel for it as we get closer to match day. Start reading more about their team. Start reading more about like injury reports. Obviously, the big question is going to be Walker. I mean, I can't imagine he's going to be back and available for this match, and that's going to he is such a difference maker. It's almost like underrated for our team where people have like kind of criticized that we used a designated player spot on him. But I think you look back at last season when he was out at the start of the season, when you look last summer when he was out for the Gold Cup, like what our defense looks like with Walker Zimmerman versus without him is just night and day. Like Jack Mayer looks like a U.S. men's national team level player when he's playing next to Walker Zimmerman. When he's not, him and Palacios are like colliding into each other as Joe Willis swings and misses on a clearance, and we give up a goal to lose a game at the end of the Charlotte match. So, we'll see what happens there. I can't imagine he'll be back for this game. Hopefully, it's not too long out for him, but that'll be a big question mark for us is how do we cope with like that? Because that's probably we've had guys out for international duty, we've had guys with some nicks and a few injuries here and there, but in terms of like really significant injuries, that's going to be the first one we've had to really deal with this season. So, if anything, that's going to be the big question for me in this match is what does the defense look like with Walker Zimmerman not there?
Yeah, and I think that a player like him being gone or there, as much as it shouldn't, it really does affect the game so much. So we need to be prepared to play without him. And I think that we probably will be for this next match, but I still have high hopes.
Yeah, no
Um,
doubt. Like I said, if we can keep with the good chance creation, the attacking play we've had, and actually finish more chances, this could be a game we win, 4-2, 3-1, something like that. A little leaky in the defense, a little not as strong back there. But if we actually start getting the goals we need to get, I think it'll be a good thing. And then the guy I'm watching, everybody, we talked about Hani last week, but the guy I'm really going to be watching, not only this week, but over the next like, few weeks, is going to be a guy who's kind of flown under the radar. I haven't heard many people like kind of give him crap. The way they gave Hani crap is, I hate to say it because I like the guy. I think he does a lot of good things, but it's Sam Surge. I mean, he's, designated player, striker, number 9. That's a guy you should be expecting to get like, 20 goals a season. And right now he's got one. And how many like good chances he had outside beyond that? He's kind of quietly been hiding under the radar of not having a great season. I think, early on, even into last year, you could kind of make excuses, hasn't had a full year here, had a coaching change midway through last season, stuff like that. But we're getting to the point where it's kind of getting to be put up or shut up time for him. He's paid a lot of money. He's in a key position. That's taking up a key roster mechanism that, we'd like to get results from in that position. So, if people are going to be critical of Hani, of all people, it's got to start looking at the eyeballs at Sam Surge a little bit. This is going to be a big next couple of weeks for him to see if like he starts hitting the ground running and starts getting some of those goals that we need for him because that's kind of what we need to start seeing more of is production from not only him but the entire attack. But he's the guy getting paid the big bucks up there, so he's a guy I got my eye on for the next couple of weeks.
yeah, I completely agree, and I think I tweeted about whenever the Hani Mukhtar like stuff was really brewing was like this. I mean, like I have no doubt that Sam Surge can be a great striker. Um, it's just is he gonna fit what how we're playing? Uh, I mean, I haven't seen him do really anything impressive this season yet, and I almost like get a little nervous when he gets the ball outside of like within the penalty box. If he has, it seems like he can't really dribble past defenders. It seems like he can't really like move with the ball all that much. Like the only times that I've seen him have a chance at scoring is whenever we kick it to him and he has a shot directly from where he is. Other than that, it ends up just we normally lose it. So I definitely have my eyes on him too. So I'm glad you brought that up. But I hope he picks it up. I hope we figure it out with him, figure out how to get him playing where he needs to, how he needs to. He also is he's one of like the most outwardly frustrated players I notice, especially whenever like he someone will kick across to him and it'll go like a little bit further and roll out of bounds and he just watches it and like throws his hand up and shakes his head, or if he thinks he should have got the ball somewhere he'll complain, which is something that is definitely to take into account that he's not, it doesn't seem like he's blaming himself a lot. And I don't know, i i, I hope we use him a little bit better and utilize him.
Yeah, no doubt that is actually a great thing to point out is that kind of stuff, that kind of demonstrative behavior. You can get away with a little. Like you're more productive, but you go 3 4 games where you don't score a goal, where you don't really do much, and suddenly like you're throwing your hands up every 2 seconds. See, that's going to start to get people are going to start to take notice of that. People are going to be kind of going, "Hey, why are you throwing your hands up? What are you doing in this situation? What are you doing to make things better?" So you're a little early to that. I think you're spot on though. That's something to watch. Is that going to be something that not only gets under the other player's skin if that keeps happening, but also that'll be something I think other fans will start to notice. Be like, bro, you haven't scored. Stop doing that. Stop slamming your hands on the ground. Stop throwing your hands up if you think the cross was 2 yards further than it should have been. Go do something more to get goals for yourself or something like that. So, yeah, I have a lot of faith in him. He was very productive when he was in England. He's had moments here. He's had it seems seems to go in spurts. Like he'll bust out like 4 or 5 goals in like a 3 game stretch, and then he'll just go
Mm-hmm.
quiet for a while. So like I think that's going to be the big test: is can he start to be a little bit more consistent, a little bit more productive overall, and like I can kind of give him a little bit of grace because like you even mentioned, it's a new system, it's a new way of playing. He's still trying to figure out what the role is exactly. He goes from like last year where the Gary Smith, he was brought in to be just the guy that stood in the box and we whipped crosses into while 10 players played defense, and so now he's actually having to play in a more fluid movement based attack. So everybody's kind of learning things. So like I said, like I'll give him grace. I'm not throwing him under the bus yet, but I'm just saying I've got an early little eyeball on him right now. If he's the guy I'm watching the next couple of weeks, of like you need to start getting in gear. You need to start doing something.
Yeah. And so for the score prediction for the next week, what are you thinking?
I'll probably go 3-2 Nashville SC because I think the defense is going to have some issues with Walker out. I think there'll be some, kind of inconsistency, some kind of miscommunication there. But I think looking at them, they've been pretty leaky defensively, and I think could be a game where our attack, creating chances, may finally turn some of those into actual goals. So I'm going to go 3-2 Nashville SC.
Okay. I think this is I'm pulling this out of complete nowhere. I'm going 4-2 Nashville with one of those Real Salt Lake goals being a penalty.
I mean, that we talk about gambling a little bit. That might be a safe bet just week in and week out. I don't know if you can bet that Nashville SC to concede a penalty because it's clicking off at like a 75% rate right now. So I mean, that seems like easy money at this point in time. You just bet that every game. We're probably going to give up a penalty at some point in time. So I think that's weirdly a safe. It shouldn't be, but I think that is probably a safe bet.
And you know what? I'm also going to throw one of our 4 goals that I predict to be a Hani PK successful.
There you go. All
I
right, we need that. Need
pulling
need
it
to.
out of nowhere, but it's just I'm playing risky right now. Um, but as we close out the show, I didn't talk to Matt about this. I forgot to put it on our docket, but I wanted to start shouting out some Nashville businesses just to kind of give back in a way. Um, so before we wrap up, I wanted to give my shout out to Dad's Dugout Sports Cards. Is a store that I visited a while back, and the staff was super friendly. They seemed like a small shop. They were working on expanding a little bit, and we've talked like sports cards a little bit through DMs. They're in Brentwood, which I think is technically Nashville ish. Uh,
It's one of those where like if you left town and somebody asked you where you're from, you'd be like, I'm from Nashville. Like
okay,
it's that
close
type
enough.
of place where like you'd be like, From Nashville, even if you're not if Brentwood, because it's like it's that type of place where you're like, you just say Nashville just to make it easy.
Fair enough. Okay, so I want to give them a shout out if you're into sports cards or memorabilia. Go check them out. They have good prices. Everything was pretty fair, and it's a friendly staff too. Matt, do you have any businesses off the top of your head? I know this is kind of sprung on you a little bit.
Nah, yeah, I'll go. Dicey's Pizza Tavern. I was just there yesterday. They don't necessarily need my shout out because they do pretty good business, but I mean, it's a little spot pretty near Geodis Park. For my money, it's one of, if not the best pizza places in town. So, good prices, not too expensive, and good, Chicago style, tavern style pizza. So, if that's your jam, if you like that type of stuff, check out Dicey's. I've eaten there probably more than I should have, but I was just there yesterday, enjoyed myself quite a bit. So, I'll shout out Dicey's.
The thing that sucks about being a fan of yours is every video you go somewhere that looks amazing to eat, and I only come to Nashville like maybe 6 7 times a year, and I
Mm-hmm.
can't hit all those places, but I'm like, okay, we have to. I saw this in Uncle Matt's video. We have to go here. It's gonna be great, but I can only do that so much, and that's one of the things that's like you always seem to be eating good food. Uh, I want to check out the place that I can't even think of the name of it, but it's like a sports term, and I think you have the yearly mug from it. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah, Tailgate Brewery. Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
It's our favorite spot. Like me and my wife go there. They've got the mug club where it's like you get discounted on your beers, you get discounted on your food, get discounted on your merch. You pay like $60 a year, I think, or something like that to be a member. And they've got locations all around town. They've got great pizza, great beers, great everything. I'm not a drinker, but the people that do drink do enjoy their beers. But good spot there. But yeah, it's fun. It was funny. Like I was watching a YouTuber that I watch who like does a lot of Disney World content, and he was at one of their food festivals, and he was like going around, and he was like, because they do like, at Epcot they'll do food festivals where there's like each country has different specialty foods and stuff like that. And he's going around and he's eating all the food, and he like it towards about halfway through the video he goes like, hey, just so you know, like I'm just taking like a bite or two of everything, and just to sample it. I'm not eating full meals on this. And I was like, God, that's the way I should be doing it. I'm literally like, eating all the food every time. Like that video I did like 2 weeks ago where I ate like hot chicken 3 meals a day. I was like, that was would have been the smarter way to do it. It was just like, I'm just going to take a bite of this hot chicken and then move on. It's like, nope, I'm going to eat the whole thing. So I got to be a little smarter about the way I do eat things because it's gonna catch up to me eventually.
no, I think we'll all be fit and skinny and never age one bit forever.
That'd be nice.
But as we wrap up, shout out those businesses. Uh, Check us both out on YouTube and Twitter. Uh, Uncle Mad on YouTube, Twitter, Wormy on YouTube and Twitter. Uh, Make sure to go support the Backline Supporters Collective. And I think that's it for us this week. We will catch you next Monday to recap and look forward to Nashville SC.
See you then.